Hey there, pre-AP. Let's start on outline 8.8, basic anatomy and physiology of taxonomy unit, last unit. Whoop, whoop. All right, so first thing we got to know is we got to know what does anatomy mean and what does physiology mean. Because whenever you are a senior, you get to look and see, hey, do I want to take anatomy and physiology my senior year for my science class? Well, let's know the difference between them. So anatomy, and remember, make sure you got that highlighter. Make sure you got something to write with. So anatomy, this is the study of structure, what something looks like. And then physiology is the study of the function of that structure. And remember, like we always say in biology, just go ahead and put it out there. Structure equals function. The way that something is designed, the structure of it, equals what its function is. There's a reason why every part about you is shaped and has the structure that it does. Otherwise, it could not carry out its proper function. So, here we go. Alright, before we begin, I do need to make sure. At the top of your paper somewhere, we need to know that, there's a hierarchy of multicellular organisms in terms of structure. And we're going to go from smallest, so let's write this down, smallest to largest. Smallest is cells. You put a bunch of cells working together, it's called a tissue. Put a bunch of tissues working together, it's called an organ. A bunch of organs working together is an organ system. Put a bunch of organ systems working together, you get an organism, smallest to largest. So we're going to talk about, some types of tissue here, some types of muscle tissue, some organs, and then some. We're going to go into depth on organ systems in other videos. So just kind of write that at the top and just think, okay, we're starting, in the words of Drake, started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, cells, now we're here. Organism, us. Whoop, whoop. Here we go. You didn't think I knew rap music, did you? Learn something new every day, guys. Learn something new. Alright, so let's highlight again. Cells, basic unit of life. You put a bunch of cells working together and you get tissues. So please highlight. These are composed of cells with common structure and function. And there are pretty much 4 major types. There's epithelial tissue. Epithelial means skin. This is skin tissue. So let's highlight this. Tissue that forms a protective covering of structures such as organs, cavities, and skin. Mainly the big one that we would talk about is skin tissue, pretty much. Connective tissue, let's highlight that these are binding together to support other tissues in the body. And it's very important to have connective tissue. There's loose connective tissue. This is probably the most abundant inside your body. It pretty much is filler material, which is very important. There's adipose tissue, which is fat cells, fat tissue. And this is for insulation. And remember, anytime there's adipose tissue, it's there for stored energy. And also for padding. So that, every time you run into something, you need a little bit. That way, whenever you run into something, you're not going to get bruised all the time. Fibrous connective tissue. These are composed of dense collagenous fibers, which they are mainly, these are ligaments. So I always get the question, what's the difference between a ligament and a tendon? Well, ligament, they connect bone to bone. And then tendons, they connect bone with muscle. Very important. So here's some pictures. Adipose tissue, what it looks like underneath the microscope. Loose connective tissue. Here's connective tissue. Very important. Cartilage. So go ahead, touch the tops of your ears, touch the tip of your nose, cartilage. You also have cartilage between every joint in your body. Let's highlight these are flexible support material, and they are also the initial framework for making bone. Whenever you were little, whenever you were born, your skull was not made of bone. It was made of cartilage. And what that cartilage does over time is it hardens or ossifies, fancy word, and it turns into bone. We're going to notice whenever we dissect our fetal pig that its rib cage that you have to actually cut through that to be able to see its heart and its lungs. You're going to notice that, hey, this isn't hard, solid bone here. No. That fetal pig did not develop enough for that cartilage to ossify and turn into bone. Alright, so let's move on to bone tissue. Here we go. That's what bone tissue looks like after that cartilage has ossified. So let's highlight bone, osteotissue. If you ever see the word osteo, it means bone. This is made from cartilage that is undergone, ooh, look at that big old fancy word, ossification, which literally means making bone. And then these cells build bone by depositing calcium. So that's why whenever you see commercials for older women, because as women age, we lose calcium, they'll say, make sure you're taking your vitamins and you got lots of calcium so you have strong bones. That's also why whenever you were little, your mom said, drink your milk, little Johnny, because you want to have strong bones and teeth. Next type of tissue, hold up, back up, sorry, blood tissue. One of my favorite tissues. How did I forget that? Blood tissue. Love me some blood tissue. So let's highlight. This tissue connects the whole organism by transporting gases and nutrients and water. Oh, I just love it. There's 3 types. There's plasma, which is the watery component that contains dissolved material. So plasma, kind of the liquid part of your blood. Then you have hematocrit, which are your cellular components, which are red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Remember we talked about platelets with hemophilia. If you have hemophilia, that, X sex-linked carried disease, you don't have many platelets, if you have platelets at all. So remember, red blood cells carry oxygen, and then white blood cells are your immune system. They go in and they go to bacteria and viruses trying to beat you up and get you sick. And then, of course, platelets, they're there to patch up wounds. Nervous tissue, they're there to receive stimuli and relay messages, send them on. And then they're basic parts of a nerve cell or a neuron. So there are dendrites, let's highlight. That's the part of the cell that receives the message. Then there's the body. It collects and bundles and kind of makes sense of the message. And then the axon takes that information that's been processed and away from the body toward the brain, the muscle, the gland, whatever needs to be stimulated. So here we go. Here's the picture of it. Dendrites, receive. There's the cell body, makes sense of it. Axon, sends it to another cell. The gap between them is called a synapsis. We'll get into more of that later, just kind of getting you to think about it. Muscle tissues, 3 types. So let's highlight, provide the pulling force within the body. So we need to highlight that the cells in this tissue are referred to as muscle fibers. We need to highlight that cells are mainly made of this stuff, these tiny microfibrils called actin and myosin that actually push and pull against each other. And we need to highlight this is the 2nd largest consumer of energy in animals. Definitely being able to move. And there are 3 types. There is skeletal, which is the muscle on your bones. These are striated muscle, which means they have stripes. and they are voluntary, which means these are the muscles on your bones. If you want to write that down, you can move them. Voluntary means you can move them. Then there's cardiac muscle. It's striated, which means it has stripes. You can see them. This is your heart. It's involuntary, which means every second you don't tell your heart, all right, heart, beat, pump some blood. Come on, keep on beating. I'm dying here. And then smooth muscle. These are in your digestive tract. They're unstriated, which means that's why they're called smooth. They're unstriated. There's no stripes. And they're also involuntary. They deal with peristalsis, or that rhythmic, if you ever hear your stomach gurgle, you hadn't eaten in a while and you're grrr, that's peristalsis. That's your digestive tract moving, saying, feed me. Alright, so organs and organ systems. Organs, please highlight that they're just a collection of similar tissues working together, like we said. And they are positioned in two different places. You're either the thoracic cavity, which your thoracic cavity is above your diaphragm. Your diaphragm pretty much divides your thoracic from your abdominal cavity. So this is above the diaphragm, and it has the lungs and the heart inside of it, and is protected by your rib cage. And then good old abdominal cavity. It is below your diaphragm, and this contains pretty much all your other systems, like digestive, urinary, reproductive, the really big kind of bulky ones. Organ systems, there they all are. We're going to go over a bunch of them. And just highlight, these are composed of working organs that are working together. There's 11 in animals. There are 11 systems that fit in your body. That's a bunch. But it's awesome. And then an organism, like this shark, it has all 11 of those body systems. I got to dissect a shark in college. It was awesome. And may I say, his intestine was really strange looking. But it was so cool because I got to see and notice, hey, they have all 11 body systems that I do. They just might be a little bit differently shaped. And they might have one or two extra things, like for living in an aquatic environment, that I don't have. That's so cool. So let's highlight. Organism is an organ systems that are working together to create that multicellular organism, like you and me and this shark. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, because we're moving on to part 2 real quick, and it's super short, so here we go. You thought I was done. Psych. Alright, so homeostasis, which keeps you regulated, like your temperature, your blood pressure, all that good stuff. So homeostasis, remember, highlight, maintaining a steady internal state. So which means you're regulated on all fronts. And there are 2 different type of feedback loops that keep you in homeostasis. So negative feedback loop stops a process already in motion and reverses the effect. So it's kind of like this picture. It's kind of like an on-off switch. Think about whenever it's really cold outside. What do you start to get really cold. What are you going to do? You're going to go put on a jacket, because your homeostasis is out of whack. You're getting cold. You got to stay that 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius on the inside of your body. And then if we look at our different feedback loop, it's positive feedback loop, which enhances the process that is already in motion. This is like childbirth. Whenever that woman starts having contractions, that positive feedback loop is going to set in, and it's going to enhance that process so that she can have that child. So let's also highlight to constantly monitor all chemical processes occurring within an organism. Every second of every day it's alive requires a tremendous amount of energy. So, the amount of energy needed to stay alive will be related to the amount of food you eat. So, make sure you eat them veggies so you can stay within homeostasis. Metabolism versus your size versus your energy you use. So remember, metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions occurring within you. We kind of talked about that in cellular respiration. So this is kind of like heat production versus how much food versus how much activity. So this will tell you, okay, I spend this much time doing this activity, generating heat so I don't freeze to death, will depend on how many calories I need. So if you're an endotherm, you generate your body heat from within because you break down your food. Therefore, you need to eat a lot more to keep your body warm. And that also means you're more active any time of the year. That's kind of like that little bitty mouse over there. And us, the human. Maybe you're an ectotherm, though. You're kind of like this snake. You obtain your heat from the surrounding environment. That's why you see things like lizards and snakes and turtles. They go and lay on logs. They pretty much get heated up from the outside in, from the sun, so that they can move around. That means that you're going to need less food because you're less active most of the year. That's why in the wintertime you don't see snakes and you don't see lizards and turtles, because they go into hibernation to save energy. Alright, metabolic rate versus body size. Let's look at that again. So if you're a small animal, you need more energy because you gotta, counter that large loss of body heat because you're spending a lot of time keeping warm. If you're a large animal, though, like us, you need less energy as you lose less body heat. And if you are a bird, you require a massive amount of energy because you have to counteract that massive amount of body heat loss needed to keep your gigantic breast muscles warm. So, and then thermoregulation, how are you going to stay warm? Well, if you're like this polar bear, you're going to regulate by having hair insulation. So if you're a regulator, you monitor heat and adjust to the changing environment. And remember, this requires energy. But maybe you're a conformer. Maybe you match your body to the outside temperature, like that snake, which requires no energy. And then those conformers, they're wrongly called, you know them as cold-blooded animals. Well, their blood isn't cold. They just have to, people think they're cold-blooded because you have to heat your blood up to be able to move. So adaptations for, kind of those ectotherms are like this polar bear. You got some insulation, you got some hair. If you're a bird, you have feathers to keep you warm, keep those breast muscles warm. And then if you are any other type of animal, you have fat tissue, which is stored energy, which means it's going to store some heat for you. So, I'm not kidding this time. This is the end of 8.8. I hope you enjoyed it, guys, and I hope you learned something. I'll see you in class tomorrow, and we'll have a data set and synthesis on it. All right, guys. Bye.